Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to join our Telco AI Deep Dive series and share some news and perspective from Dell Technologies. And I want to get into this announcement around the work you're doing with Meta and their Llama 2 large language model, but maybe we could start a bit more broadly. And really, what I'm trying to understand is when we look at some of these generative AI large language models that are source of a lot of media coverage, a lot of interest, broad interest. They're general purpose tools, and they're intentionally general purpose tools. But when we start to think about Gen AI for enterprises, whether that's telecom or other, you need to add some domain specificity. You need to do some
Sure.
data curation to make that aligned with the desired business outcome. So just give us some perspective on how do you make that transition at the model level before you even get into actually deploying the solution.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think that the maybe not the science is pretty well established, but maybe the practical nature of how to use generative AI and large language models is really developing rather rapidly. And I would say that if we say the sort of the clock started ticking, let's say November of last year with the launch of ChatGPT, when I think everybody else, or I should say the world became really uh, clued into the capabilities of generative AI. Of course, it's been around for quite a bit longer than that, but let's just say from then to now, the thought of how one might utilize Gen AI models has really changed rather rapidly. I think the beginning was, hey, we're going to need to build our own models. Like everyone thought that, right? And it's like, well, actually, there's really no reason for you at this point to develop your own model unless you are, I would say, one of a very small handsfuls of folks around the world capable of doing that. And then there was this thought that most people would actually come and fine tune models in order to create what you're describing as a more domain specific version of that model. And what we found is that, you know, the current utilization tends to be focused on what I would describe as expert systems, chatbots, customer support, team member support, so you can find information more quickly. We have some interesting things around like digital humans to help cities, for example, to interact with their populace a little bit more precisely and in many more languages than they might be able to do with human staff. And those techniques actually, the model doesn't necessarily possess the data that you want to, I would say, use to generate some sort of output. That technique is sort of popularly called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, which in essence, you're using a large language model, but you're passing it a lot of context using what I would say is more traditional AI techniques like semantic search and other things. So there's a way of actually achieving a degree of domain specificity or even singular company specificity or even singular product specificity by using these techniques without having to actually manipulate a model at scale, which is frankly a pretty tall order. That being said, there are reasons why one would want to adapt a model, and one reason why we like and have sort of announced, I shouldn't say sort of, we have announced this partnership with Meta. Llama 2 comes with a very, I would say, open and generous free use policy, and I guess license is the wrong word, but capability. And therefore, you can make derivative models, and there are techniques that companies can use that make the adaptation of the model far easier to do without having to, have enormous amounts of compute. A technique, there's a family of techniques called PEFT, or parameter efficient fine tuning, which allows you to basically tune a small percentage of the model and get 90+% of the results that you would get from full fine tuning. So the model world, adapting models is becoming far simpler, And I'd say 80% of the applications that I'm seeing in the world around us today fall into that RAG, which is the acronym for retrieval augmented generation, are using RAG, and therefore they don't they don't even need to fine tune the model because they're using, again, instead of, I sort of describe it as like one note. We're banging away on large language models, but instead you're starting to play music by combining together multiple notes, semantic search, different techniques from the world of AI alongside large language models to sort of tailor them to specific verticals, specific businesses, specific use cases, etc.
So you mentioned a point in time there, November, sort of the debut of Chat GPT for the public, and a point in time for me is Dell Tech World. That was kind of the kickoff of that spring conference season, and you all had a really well articulated strategy around AI that I know you had a big hand in. But one thing that struck me was the talking points around how AI is not just going to transform our customers' businesses, it's going to prompt a revisioning of Dell's business. So maybe just you can tell us a little bit about, if you look out a few years, how you think your customers' businesses are kind of going to fundamentally change, and then what that means for Dell.
Yeah, for sure. So let me talk first about our strategic framework that we talk about quite frequently. And I will say that strategic framework, credit where credit is due. Our global CTO, John Rose, actually had put this AI strategic framework in place many years ago, 5 to 7 years ago. And it's described by four pillars: AI in our products, AI for our business operations. Those are kind of the two internal elements of our strategy. And then AI on, running AI applications on the solutions that we provide our customers. And then the last pillar, which actually was added over the last year, was AI with, which is our partners, including Meta on the technology side, but also go-to-market partners, consultancies, et cetera, that will help go from sort of the horizontal capability to turn them vertical. And telecom is a great example of an area where, frankly, pre-Gen AI was being used for lots of, to wring out more bandwidth out of spectrum, so on and so forth. Beam shaping, steering, all of that stuff has been done utilizing algorithmic techniques. So those four pillars, again, just to repeat them, it's AI in, for, on, with. We actually think that that's a really compelling framework for other companies to use. Now, they may not build solutions that would bring the on into place, but certainly AI in product offerings from companies and AI for revolutionizing business operations. Everyone's going to go through that. We're in the process of going through, a pretty dramatic, I would say, modernization effort, leveraging Gen AI to improve, the efficiency of our sales makers, reduce the quote to cash cycle time. We're also using it to improve how we interact with our customers and drive customer experience and help them get to the best answer most quickly for maybe a service and support challenge that they're facing. We're using it to generate content, and of course, we'll transparently tell you, this was generated using Gen AI, but using it for content creation. What did I miss? Developer productivity, which is another great space where you see code co-pilots and all of these other elements driving innovation and driving, frankly, developer productivity. So it's interesting. We have a four-pillar framework, and within the four pillar, the FOR pillar, there are actually four focus areas for us around services, sales, content generation, and developer productivity.
All right, so AI for, in, on, and with, in this case, Meta and the Llama 2 model. So let's talk about this news a little bit. I think, super high level, the idea is to simplify deployment of that particular model on premise using Dell's AI IT infrastructure portfolio, your client devices, your services. So maybe just can you take us through the key points of that announcement?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is that operating a large language model at scale is not impossible, but it requires some degree of know-how, knowledge, et cetera. And so what we've been working directly with the Meta team is on simplifying the implementation of their family of the Llama 2 is a family of large language models from different sizes and different optimizations for what they would deliver. And we're building those into validated designs that simplify how customers deploy large language models on premises. And that's sort of key. A lot of the offerings in the marketplace today tend to be service delivery, that they're being delivered from, in essence, the cloud, if you will. And we believe that, it's really important to move AI to the data. The vast majority of data is on premises. In fact, 83% of it is on premises. And so, moving that compute capability to the data, we believe is a far more pragmatic approach than trying to move vast amounts of data to an external entity where you may expose data, so on and so forth. And frankly, we just think it's ultimately going to have a stronger ROI to build these capabilities for yourself and deploy them on premises. So our job is to make it easy to deploy advanced large language models on premises. And we're working with Meta, who builds one of the preeminent open access models, free access, again, with generous terms to allow you to use it for commercial purposes. And just making that really simple to do in your data center or in your colo facility or whatever. And then at that point, it's your model, right? You can adapt that model to whatever you want. You can utilize the technique that I talked about, that RAG technique, very efficiently. And frankly, I think you'll see the cost to leverage generative AI drop significantly because, instead of pricing, first of all, there is no pricing. It is an open access model, but most models are priced on a consumption basis, a per token basis. And a token is a fairly abstract notion. It's a part of a word, if you will. And therefore, you're kind of running the meter all the time. Whereas with an on-prem implementation of a Llama 2 based model, you can modify it to be your own. You could train it with your data if you want to go through that, or use RAG as I described. And you're not running the meter, right? That's your model that's running on your platform. You can use it as much or as little as you want. So there's a lot of reasons why we're doing it, but the primary thing that we're doing is just making it as simple as possible. The other part of it is that we share a pretty strong, I think, we've got a common objective, Meta and Dell, in terms of their support of the open source community is quite significant. In fact, the PyTorch, which is one of the most preeminent frameworks for building AI applications, actually was a project that was open sourced by Meta. In fact, some of what we're doing to make it easy is to optimize PyTorch on top of Dell's infrastructure. So that wanting to get advanced technology into the hands of many by giving things to the open source community is something that Meta is doing. And we, Dell, pride ourselves on bringing access to advanced technologies to customers of all sizes, right? We don't just service the largest of the large. We service customers all the way down to small businesses. So it's important for us to get and simplify the deployment of this very advanced technology to the many. And so we both sort of share that value of providing access to advanced technology. Of course, everyone knows Meta from their products, but their engineering organizations, sort of share this notion of, let's set technology free and get it into the hands of the many. And it's become sort of a rising tide that floats all boats in terms of innovation with advanced technology.
Yeah, I think that idea of democratizing access to AI is very important. That's a very deep topic, and we're never going to cover it in the constraints here. But I did have a follow-up question about
Please.
these validated designs. You mentioned that,
Sure.
Dell's serving the largest of the large and small businesses, and this is across all verticals, essentially. So
Sure.
when you think about a sort of blueprint that's meant to make this easy, make it scalable, make it predictable, how do you balance that with the knowledge that generative AI use cases, applications, they're changing quickly. They're being developed very quickly. It's a very dynamic space, and it seems to just be getting more dynamic. So how do you make it scalable, but also make it flexible to meet all of your end users where they are?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, this won't be the first and last announcement of a broad ecosystem that we will build around AI and generative AI. So you will hear a steady drumbeat. We've talked about the work we're doing with NVIDIA prior and the validated designs we've done with them. You'll hear more announcements in terms of partnerships with folks who really build a strong community around what you rightly say is a very dynamic environment, and those partners help bring that community together and get all of that great innovation in a place where it's easy to access and easy to deploy. You'll hear more about that, frankly, very, very soon. So we are recognizing that this is a dynamic and fast moving space. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get started and use the things today, but we are going to host a robust ecosystem from here going forward that captures all of that best innovation and brings it and reduces it to practice in a way that's accessible to everybody. So this isn't going to be our last validated design or our last appliance or our last partnership or our last this. This is the first of what I believe will be many, many partnerships that we launch in the coming years. But our goal is going to continue to be, making it easy and approachable and tractable for nearly anybody to develop AI powered applications that improve their lives, improve their business operations, improve, because we are technology optimists, right? That's our nature at Dell Technologies. Is A lot of people are talking about the potential negatives, and we're not being Pollyanna about that. In fact, it's a big focus for me personally. But we do believe that this is something that's going to drive human progress, and therefore we need to get it into the hands of the many. And part of that is building a robust ecosystem. So we're not going to do it all ourselves. We're going to build a merry band of partners to bring all of this great innovation to as many people as possible, and we're proud to do that. That's kind of what we do.
So when you were making the case for bringing this on premise, you made some really good points around, why would you pipe this all back to a centralized data center? That does raise obvious security concerns. You're, introducing latency into the equation. It's just, I completely agree with you. If you can do it on premise, that's the way to do it. But yeah, I did want to get some understanding from you when you've got a global enterprise that is probably multi-cloud already,
Sure.
and they want to start to run a large language model or models that might touch business critical processes. What is the security logic there? And I'd also be
Yeah.
curious, as you continue your conversations with your customers, do you get the trust from them? Do they feel confidence in what's happening?
Yeah, so let me break that down a few different ways. The one thing that I want to say is we believe that the world is hybrid and multi-cloud, right? So we're not trying to be cloud denialists. There is a time and a place for public cloud to be utilized. So let me just start there, because a lot of people, you're a vested interest in saying that. Well, of course, but we are partners with the largest cloud providers in the world as well. And I think you rightly point out that most people tend to be multi-cloud, and we have an entire family across our Apex portfolio that allows you to build hybrid, an Apex Azure Stack on-prem capability that can interact seamlessly with a public Azure environment. We do that with VMware. We do that with pretty much everybody, right? And frankly, that is the foundation on which we will deploy a lot of this technology. Remember, most of the innovation is occurring inside of capabilities that are delivered as Kubernetes containers, right? So that in essence is the definition of it rides upon a cloud implementation, a hybrid cloud implementation. So we are going to pair together our cloud portfolio, our Apex portfolio, with the data science stack or the AI stacks that we're building in partnership with this ecosystem that I described. So the putting this all together is part of what we're doing today in terms of both cloud and AI. Now, you asked the question about security, and one of the reasons why we believe that this on-premises capability and hybrid capability is important is that you are potentially dealing with very sensitive data, and we've talked about cloud, public cloud, private cloud, and security. Public clouds do a really good job with security, but at the end of the day, if you don't need to expose your data, why expose your data? So let's create that capability. And one way of doing that is, sort of trying to reduce the surface area of where your data finds itself, right? So that's why our philosophy is, look, data is your IP. It's the most valuable thing that you have. It's also difficult to move. It has gravity. As Dave McCrory, a one-time Dell employee, when he invented that term, data gravity, it's true. It's difficult to move. So why not move the AI to the data? And at the same time, you're reducing the sort of exposure surface area of your data estate, which is why we believe that, that this hybrid environment or this on-premises implementation is a critical part of your AI strategy going forward. We're not saying don't use public AI capabilities. In fact, we will use those as well. But it's like I've been saying for years, it's sort of different horses for different courses. This on-prem capability, one reason why we're building it is that a lot of interesting capability has been built off-prem, right? And that will have a role, but we're going to be the ones building and delivering it on premises and then connecting it with your cloud investments, the platforms you've chosen, and again enabling that hybrid plus multi-cloud capability for AI applications as well. So I'm not saying that the security end all be all is on premises private. There's still security concerns that you need to address. We're just saying that a pragmatic approach for security reasons, for cost reasons, for just the general difficulty of moving vast amounts of data around, is it seems wise that you should bring bring the AI to the data. And again, 83% of that data is on premises. It's interesting. We also saw a recent report where the same reason, it was actually 87% of respondents said that they prefer an on-premises or hybrid implementation for AI for all of the reasons we've said. So it's not just us saying it, it's customers saying, not just our customers, but generally speaking, IT buyers are saying that, look, this is the way we're going to go. We're going to use a hybrid approach in the same way we've ended up in a hybrid approach with cloud, generally speaking.
Everything that you've told me today, I think is relevant for any kind of enterprise, but just to speak directly to our core audience here of network operators and other people in the telecoms industry, they're facing the same problems everybody is. They're multi-cloud, security's huge priority. They need to monetize their investments a little bit better. So just in bringing Gen AI into the picture, what do you see as the big sort of opportunities for operators, big challenges for operators?
Yeah. Well, I think that the one that's really interesting is that a lot of AI inferencing, we believe, will occur at the edge, right? So this is in the broader world around us. And the broader world around us has a connectivity problem, right? And the way to deploy some of these edge inferencing elements may be, in fact, to deploy them at the network edge, right? So network operators, this edge inferencing could be the killer app for these advanced networks and sort of making the play to power edge applications. It's one, and in fact, many of the designs around sort of this disaggregated telecom infrastructure is so that applications can run in the network. These seem to be like some pretty obvious application types that you would want to deploy into the network. We're also seeing that AI and private implementations of 5G technology, for example, go together very well because for the very same reason that I described, is that a lot of AI inferencing and automation requires a degree of connectivity. And what better way to do that than with, telco infrastructure, right? So we think that it's a big boon to the sort of this movement towards more openness in the network, so that you can deploy more open applications in the network. So from my perspective, this seems like it's a seminal moment for almost every industry, but certainly for the wireless telecom industry, it's a really a big part of it. And I would say it's not just mobile telephony, but it's also other types of wireless technologies, anything out there, right? Like, you're going to want to connect it if you're going to run these types of edge inferencing things to build value. So I think they go to well together. I was just with I won't name a fairly large, largely government consultancy, and this is the ripest area right now for their business, is the combination of AI and, for them, private 5G deployments for different, if you will, U.S. government use cases, without going any further into what those are. But they're like, for them, they're like super excited about the combination of AI and wireless and telecom, right? They think that this is sort of like that killer app moment for them.
Well, with that intriguing teaser, Matt, I think we can leave it. I know you've given us some really good practical advice here, and let me see if I can get all four of the prepositions in here. It was great speaking with you on the Telco AI Deep Dive. A lot of material in a small amount of time, so thank you for sharing your perspective with me and with our audience. It's great to talk, Matt.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.